for getting all done up for us, Mike.
Awesome. Nice to be here, Chase.
Well, thanks. And thanks for everybody for joining us and bearing with us through that little setup there. Sean will be jumping in a second. I know that he would want us to start off with the email that Twilio sent out to us. Our rep personally sent us an email, and some other people have seen it, where they had said, hey, we've sort of pushed back our deadline date for all of this. We don't have a new deadline, so it's inevitably pushed back or indefinitely pushed back. So we don't have to go into full panic mode. But what's important to note is that these changes are going to come, and so now's a great time to start preparing for them. Sean will also talk about how one solution that High Level is rolling out in Q4, and that is going to be to basically switch over and not have to run your own Twilio account. So lots of people have said, hey, I don't need to run my own Twilio account. I'm happy to pay slightly more if this was all just done for me. And our goal is really to get a bulk discount as quickly as possible and pass that on to reduce the costs for those that don't want to run their own Twilio account, and everything would just happen through the High Level accounts. And so you wouldn't have to worry about, this kind of stuff. But that's not going to roll out until October. So in the meantime, if Twilio and the carriers do move forward with these changes between now and then, it is important to know what's coming and to be prepared. And Michael has helped a lot of people in the community already get prepared for what's coming. And so he was kind enough to join us for a webinar to talk about what he has seen, heard, and done so far. And Michael, I know that you sent me 2 emails today. Are these brand new emails?
Yes. And one email I received, and one email is an email Chris Romani received. So the email Chris Romani received that I forwarded to you is an email that's creating a little bit of confusion in the community. And
okay.
it's
well,
not
I'm sure.
clearly... Go ahead.
Let's backtrack before we start talking about all of that. And let's just start out with what the heck is 10 A2p 10 DLC, right? And I admittedly have not spent time investigating this, so I'm a noob, and I'll represent all the noobs here with a bunch of noob questions. So Mike, what is happening? I know that the cellular carriers are making changes, and therefore Twilio has to change. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll give you...
Let's start there.
We'll start there. The story as I best understand it. It's very confusing, but let's hopefully by the end of this, however long this goes, hour, we'll clear up confusion and any sense of panic. So A2p 10 DLC stands for Application to Person 10-digit long code. Fairly new innovation in the SMS, MMS space. A2p itself has been around since 2019. Verizon had already implemented their version of it. Now AT&T, T-Mobile, and all the other carriers are piggybacking upon that. One thing to note quickly is I'm asked this question frequently. There is A2p is for MMS, SMS only. So there's a line of demarcation between voice and SMS/MMS. 2 completely different animals. A2p applies only to text, SMS, MMS.
Okay.
Beyond that, the speculation.
Good question, Michael. One of the questions that we had that I think we could answer right away, does this apply to people in Canada as well, or is this a US only update?
So right now it's going to be a global requirement. Right now what we are working on as a community is US only. So some of the challenges that I have seen with others are businesses in Canada or elsewhere outside of the US doing business in the US. The challenge comes from not having an American-based business. The registration process requires certain pieces of information to verify your business. There are obstacles if you do not have a US-based business. I have seen some businesses be approved fairly quickly. I've seen others just not be approved, not be able to fill out the forms. So there is and can be a challenge if you're not in the US.
Cool. So Michael, where do we start? So what's going on in a nutshell? Like, what is this about? The carriers want more money? Is this about protecting people from spam? What's the deal?
All the above.
Okay.
So on the note of voice versus data, first thing to note is the FCC has rolled out a series of press releases. They are heavily regulating voice. Shaken and stirred that we've all probably seen in the Trust Hub, or if not seen in the Trust Hub, we may have caught wind of it in emails from Twilio or even in the news. It's been on the headline in the news frequently. Shake and stir and voice is an FCC voice mandated regulation. On the other side of the fence is the data, SMS, MMS. And to the best of my educated guess is going to be that the government and the FCC said, look, carriers, either police yourselves or we're going to police you. So the carriers have taken it upon themselves to police themselves. And what that has turned into is what we're now experiencing is the carriers are bearing the burden of creating a centralized, I'll call it database, where in that database, in order for us, agencies and businesses to have the privilege of sending messages to the carrier's customers, we have to abide by their rules and we have to pay fees. That's the best I can do to explain in simple terms what's going on.
Okay. And now what exactly does this mean? So is Twilio, okay, so what you just said made me worry a little bit because each carrier is going to have its own set of rules, or have they come together and established a common set of rules that Twilio is sort of gatekeeping?
I think it's both, to be honest. So each carrier has their own fee schedule. Each carrier, T-Mobile, as an example, has a non-refundable $50 registration fee per messaging use case. I think it's per messaging use case. So Twilio is playing the gatekeeper, trying to collaborate or centralize as best they can, normalize as best they can the carrier's requirements. And God forbid if we had to actually go in and create a profile for every carrier. Because we all think of the main three carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, but if you look through your usage, the new usage fees in your Twilio, you'll see there's dozens or more different carriers. So Twilio is actually helping standardize that process, normalize the process. So it's one application, one registration per agency, and one per business or sub account. That information is normalized, it's standardized. Beyond that, the fees are different. And how the carriers filter or block messages, I believe is going to be, they're going to work or operate autonomously or independent from each other. That's my best guess.
So one thing that we probably should have pointed out is that they have come out and said this whole change only applies to businesses or what are as an agency you're registering as, what's the term?
A2p.
But like in Twilio, you're registering yourself as a...
At the agency level, an ISV or reseller. At the lower levels, the secondary or sub-account level, you're a direct business.
Okay, so an ISV or a reseller is what you're going to register your agency as. And I saw something about a 3,000 message threshold, right?
Yes.
What is that?
This is the point of a lot of confusion, and hopefully Sean gets here shortly and he can help like tag team on this one. The reality is, from all the signals and communication I've had, is the ISV starter brand process is not going to be deployed till August 15th-ish. August 15th, I believe, is their day, which is a Sunday. So for me as an agency, that's a problem because we have this monetary deadline of August 16th. Get all of your accounts and sub-accounts registered by August 16th, because after that date, you're going to have to pay fees. And the alternative to not registering your business would be to rely upon this starter brand process being available on August 15th. And
if you register before August 15th, you don't have to pay the fees?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So that's been a lot of the urgencies, a lot of the larger agencies that have been around high level that have hundreds of clients. For them, it's been very stressful because they look at this looming August 16th deadline and they think to themselves, I better take care of this now just in case. something I need to have this in place for whenever the filtering goes into place, for whenever the blocking starts to be implemented by the carriers. If they take care of it ahead of time, they can save on those fees. So the larger agencies are taking it very seriously because they fear this unknown deadline of having to pay fees and not having it done by then. Does that help?
Sure. And so what's the 3,000 limit? Are they saying that if you're only sending a couple hundred messages a month, this doesn't even apply to you?
It does apply, but not to as an extreme of the extent that it does if you are sending more than 3,000. So once again, we're reverting back to this conversation of starter brands, ISV starter brands. On paper, it says if you're sending less than 3,000 messages, and one of the emails I forwarded to you, it says if you're sending less than 3,000 messages and you have less than 5 phone numbers, then you are eligible for this starter brand thing that's coming supposedly in the middle of August. So
and is that, are we talking sub accounts? Or are we talking the ISV? Okay.
Sub per account.
Got it.
And for me, hands-on, having seen hundreds of different agencies and sub accounts, for me, it's a little confusing because what if I have, say, 100 clients and I have 95 clients that fit well under the 3,000 threshold, and I have 5 clients that are above the threshold? What do I do? Do I do all of them as a contingency and spend hours upon hours registering, collecting information, registering all 100? Do I just focus on those 5, or do I do nothing? That's a very common question, and rightly so, especially given kind of the conflicting information or news that we get that trickles through all different sources, right?
Well, I mean, regardless, if I'm an agency and I'm like, yeah, I have some sub accounts sending less than 3,000 messages, my goal is to get it above that, right? I want to grow that business and grow that account so that it's doing really well. And eventually, so if it's me, I'm going to plan for it to go above 3,000 at some point anyway. But you mentioned time. Before we get into like actually walking through an example, how long does it take to, so there's a process to register yourself as the ISV, and then every sub account, right? So how long does it take to register a sub account?
5 to 10 minutes, at most.
Okay.
So the biggest problem people have is, what do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, where do I start? Like, if Twilio had been, matter of fact, the email I got today was the first time they sent out an email. It says, if you haven't started, start by registering your account. Click here, and it had a big blue button. I had yet to see an email from them that said, here's where to start. That little blue button, had they been sending that in all of their correspondence, probably would have cut down on a lot of the confusion. Biggest question I have is, where do I start?
Okay.
Bar none.
So Anish asked a question about the 3,000 messages. That is per month, Anish, not per day. And again, we had another question. Does it apply to agencies not operating in the USA? I think what you said is if you're using USA numbers, Michael, it applies to you?
Yes. Once again, you're paying for the privilege to send messages to US consumers. And when you consider what's the goal or objective of this, the goal or objective is to hold every message from every phone number from every business accountable, so that the carriers can look up in a database what message was sent from what phone number, what business is responsible for that message and phone number, and is there a use case against that message? And then they can say, yes, this business is compliant or not compliant. When you take that into consideration, the objective, and you consider international law for a minute, I now realize, well, it's much more difficult to enforce these rules across country lines. Once again, I have seen Canadian businesses be registered, but one common denominator for Canadian businesses is their TCR trust score tends to be a little bit lower. And it's a risk factor, right? So the risk factor is if someone from Canada is sending unsolicited messages to US people, the carriers, they're outside of the reach of any legalities of this. Hence, the risk is greater. and that's reflected in a lower score.
Okay, so sorry, I'm just logging into my Twilio account right now.
I'm actually looking up the email that I forward to you to get the exact words.
It looks like there's so much going on. So when I log in, this is what I see right now. New console coming, 4 weeks until transition. Get ahead of the changes and enjoy updated navigation and visual improvements. You will be able to return to the legacy console until August 28th. So it seems like they're kind of really trying to catch up to themselves as well.
Yeah, whenever I'm on the screen with someone and that new console appears, I say, do us both a favor, let's switch back to legacy. So it's just like anytime Facebook changes their interface or Google, it's change. And we as agency owners sometimes are resistant to change. So I don't like the new screens, but it's because I'm used to the old screens. That's my take on that.
Gotcha. So, and everybody that's joined us, if you have questions, do me a favor, use the QA feature so I can make sure that we get them as opposed to the chat, because sometimes stuff gets lost in chat. So Michael, with this, does this matter? I'm assuming we need to pick marketing. Am I about to shoot myself in the foot here?
No, I don't. That's for their own market. I don't see any impact of selecting one or the other there. Incidentally, I just read the email, Chase. It's the daily limit of 3,000.
Oh.
Send greater than 3,000 SMS segments and MMS messages to the US daily. So that's a daily limit.
Okay, well then that's quite a lot per sub account, if it's per sub account.
Per sub account. Yeah, it's very rare, I'll say, of the people I met with, maybe 1% of the total sub accounts, and that's being gracious. 1% may send more than 3,000 a day. Now there are quite a few more agency I spoke with where they'll have a client that sends randomly, arbitrarily 1, 2, 3, 5 times a month. They might send more than 3,000 as part of a batched operation, but it's very infrequent that someone's actually averaging more than 3,000 a day.
Okay, cool. So Sean just messaged me, said he's in here. Let me try to find him. I see a Sean with no name, but he says he's in the waiting room. So here we go with more Zoom issues.
So there, I'll address questions while you're doing that.
Cool.
Paul asked a great question. Paul said, I'm confused on the 5-number limit though. Is that all encompassing for all accounts, including sub accounts? To me, it reads like it's per sub account. However, when I was reviewing the exact email with someone today, they interpreted it as something else. So here's the actual email right here that I'm referring to.
Hey, Michael, because you're the host, can you make Sean a host?
Yeah. So I got to find them. So
or the host.
Search Sean Clark, more, promote to panelist.
Now it's probably not going to launch his video, which was the question that we had, or the issue that we had with you. So you might have to.
So if I make it like pass the baton.
There we go. Pass that baton. Here we go. Rocking and rolling. Boom.
Let's do it.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Sorry. Proceed ahead.
No problem. So we were just recapping. It sounds like today new messaging came out from Twilio. One of them that clarified that the 3,000 limit is per day, not per month, which really is quite a lot of messaging going on. But before we get back to this, let's have Sean give us the high level side update that's coming at the end of Q3.
Yeah, so we recognize for various reasons, ironically enough, before A2p 10 DLC, we were already going to do this just to make everyone's life easier. Long ago and far, far away, I had a dream where we were going to basically tell Twilio about all of the amazing Twilio accounts we'd help them open and create a combined discount for everybody. Unfortunately, Twilio never made that dream come true. And so in order to do this for everybody, eventually what we need to do is have basically a master account. But, we went through this with Yext And that's how we were able to get a super low price on our Yext offering. And so we'll do the same thing here at Twilio. So basically what that means is by the end of Q3, you'll be able to move all of your Twilio sub accounts into high-level sort of master Twilio account. And as a result, over time, we'll be able to then create a discount model and actually bring your prices down. And then also, as part of it, we're going to just handle the A2p situation in the sense that we'll do all the registration for all the brands behind the scenes. We'll do all the metering, and we'll even do the step up, which is for the very few people, and there are going to be very few who hit 3,000 or messages or more a day. We'll do things like warn that location, pop a modal window, have them pay the extra fee to do the registration, kind of handle all the complexity, if you will, on the back end. And there's some other pieces of this too that are starting to leach out. Like I saw somebody contacted me today from Germany, and I guess sole traders in Germany are no longer allowed to do SMS. You have to be like a corporation there. So there's a lot of these sort of complexities. And what it is in my book is simply that it used to be that Twilio wanted to work with, and not just Twilio, by the way, in general, these types of providers wanted to work with pretty much anybody that would be willing to come in and pay them any money. But now, in reality, they're not interested in doing that anymore, mostly because the regulatory environment has changed. And so at the end of Q3, we'll have a fully hosted model so that you can move all your stuff in. Initially, it's just going to be about simplification on the A2p 10 DLC side. And then long-term, we'll also add in a discount. So
I have to join from another computer, Chase. I'm getting these. Your computer is going to restart in 15 minutes with updates.
Okay, that's always
I'm going to
fun.
stay on this one as long as I can. But I am going to join from another computer as well.
While you're doing that, let me know if you can field some questions. So a 3,000 per day is a pretty high limit. However, 5 numbers in an account is pretty common, especially if you're doing call pools and things like that. So
Right.
If you have 5 numbers, you're going to have to register the sub account. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that'd be my recommendation is if you're above that $3,000 daily limit or have more than 5 numbers, then by all means, go through the registration process now.
And if you register,
go ahead.
I was going to say, if you register your ISV now before the date they'll start charging fees to register, you don't have to go register all of your sub accounts right now. Is that right?
You don't have to, but depending on if they want to operate in the shared model, the go high level shared model, if they're going to participate, there's no urgency and it's not required that they register sub accounts. However, if that agency is, say, on the fence, or they have a lot of sub accounts that are above that limit, or they want to retain some control over the Twilio, then first let me pose this as a question. Come October 1st, will people have the option to roll under the ISV shared model in high level and
Yes.
or do their own?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no forcing function here. We tend to be the type of people who, I always like to say we're carrots, not sticks. And so ultimately, we think there'll be some huge advantages, obviously on the lack of complexity and the cost saving side eventually as well. And I say eventually because I know that won't be available day one, but we'll get there shortly there, as soon after as we can. But also respectfully, we understand that some people are going to have their own accounts, and that's great. And so you can keep those too.
Yeah. So in my case, just to share, our agency's perspective is we do work with the government, political campaigns, and nonprofits. So we have a lot of exceptions. Like these are use case exceptions in the Twilio world. So we're going to want to retain full control over our agency so that we have control over the exceptions. And that's us. So our decision is, made based upon our needs. If we did not have those needs, we would certainly be rolling under the high level umbrella without exception.
Thanks. Okay. So are we on to the Q&A period, or do we have more ground to cover here, Chase?
I think we can go straight to Q&A. So Michael and I are going to put together a support doc that you'll be able to find in help.gohighlevel.com that will give you more information as far as like start at this URL and the first step is this and then go do that. But I think right now it'd probably be most valuable if we just hit up the Q&A.
Can I give a
Yeah,
like a 5-minute kind of glass half full scenario, how I approach A2p?
definitely.
Okay. One thing I always like to mention, and I already did mention it, is that SMS and voice are two different monsters, two different beasts. A2p is SMS, MMS specific only. Does not overlap at all with voice. Two separate requirements. Secondly, is I think we can all agree in today's world and environment that regulation and compliance will only become more strict over time. This is just scratching the surface in terms of rules and regulations. And all of this is being done to protect the consumer. People like my mom who still pay per message. So those are the people, my mom is the people they're trying to protect that does not want to receive unsolicited messages. So the cup half full for me is you don't have to take a full dive into A2p and understand what it is, how it impacts you and your clients, but you can actually turn this into a benefit for your agency. And here's how I pose that scenario is pretend you're meeting with a new client, a prospective new client. And you can start your conversation or you can inject into the conversation, dear sir, dear ma'am, if you weren't aware, there's a lot of new regulations in the voice and more importantly, the data world. So if text messaging is important to you, from this point forward, there's going to be two kinds of agencies. Number one, rockstar awesome agencies that do awesome work in marketing in the digital space, but don't understand compliance and can't deliver your messages. Then on the other side of the fence, there's going to be awesome rockstar marketers and digital agencies like mine that do care about compliance, and we'll be certain that we can send your messages from day one and it'll be sustainable and consistent. Who would you prefer to work with? So that's one of the cup half full scenarios is you now have, this is no longer a feature or it's no longer something you can ignore. It's actually now very important. So it's a benefit to working with your agency that you're compliant. And whether you're responsible for that client, you're responsible for your own Twilio, or whether you're leveraging what GHL, Go High Level is offering, you, by virtue of having those tools, are at an advantage over the competitor. So I'm very assertive in that we use that same language in our outbound messaging now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. So
I also just, Shivam was kind enough to jump in. He is actually the product manager leading the charge on our migration and having we call it the ISV model, but the hosted model. So as the Q&A goes through, he can be a great resource because he's actually the guy doing all the hard work and who has all the better answers than me.
Okay, one cool. Other. Oh, welcome, Shivam.
Thanks. Or Shivam, you mean?
Shivam. Yeah.
Like Sean. Sometimes they get confused. Some people say we look alike too, but
should we just start at the top of the questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
I have one other cup half full scenario.
Okay.
For agencies, it's just part of your sales toolbox is what it is. For those people that are going to manage their own Twilio, or even now some questions for Sean and Chase, what I'm advocating for people and recommending is, look, if you have the hood open and you're already changing the oil, it costs you but 30 seconds of your time to check the antifreeze. And what I mean by that is when you have the Twilio Trust Hub open, you're registered your profile, you're registering your clients' profiles. It takes you 30 seconds of your time to apply or register for the shake and stir and or the CNAM. And the value that you can extend to your clients by going through those processes is just as easy as checking the antifreeze in your car. For 30 seconds worth of time, you can turn that into a benefit for your clients. Hey, dear client, dear sir, dear ma'am, do you want to have confidence that your number is being shown as verified caller and or your business name, or do you want to risk that call coming across as spam likely? And you can once again spin that into your favor and put it in your sales toolbox. And then when branded calls come, that's a game changer. When branded calls, imagine speaking with a prospective client. they're on the fence about doing business with you, and you say, dear sir, dear ma'am, how would you like it if I put your logo or your face on someone's phone when you call them? That's a game changer right there.
That's interesting.
Oh, we should probably talk about that real quick. Just a heads up, this is an Android only thing, but Android is, Android actually has more handsets in the United States than any other, than iPhone. So it does actually cover physically more bodies. They have this concept called verified callers. You can see here this, and I think this ties into the shake and stir concept, but notice it says, 800, blah, blah, blah. And then if you get it verified, it'll actually it's Growing Tree Bank that's called you and it's verified. You see that?
Yes.
We're actually approved on this developer program in beta right now. So as we roll through this, we'll actually be able to start populating logos, populating call reasons, actually doing a lot of this stuff on Android on behalf of your clients and yourself. So just a heads up, we'll have that in the platform. And we probably won't knock it in until Q4 because it's actually currently not that massive. But notice they also have business verification to SMS as well. So, but that will come. And interestingly, this also rolls out. We also are. I basically ran this whole list down. We're also qualified for the Rcs Business Messaging. And Rcs, just a heads up, is if you haven't seen it before, it's like Facebook Messenger essentially, but as a replacement for SMS. And it was touch and go there for a little bit, but it's been announced that every US carrier is going to be supporting it. Through Google. Google will actually power it. And if you haven't got one of these messages yet, they're pretty cool when you get them. I got like an order verification from a company, and as you can see on the screen, it's a lot more interactive and useful than a traditional SMS message might be. So, anyways, you'll start to see this roll out into the platform as after we get through this ISV model transition.
Yeah, those are game-changing features. They really are.
All right.
That's huge. Cool. So let's start at the top. Teresa, what you suggest for us? We are a U.S. corporation, have applied for approval in the Trust Hub over a week ago and have not been approved yet. What should we do?
Is that your primary business profile?
Teresa, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. We would have to take her off of mute, Sean, if she's still here.
All right, I'm on it. Allowed to talk.
I mean, Mike, you want to walk us through either scenario?
There we go. She's on. She's here.
Hey, yes, I'm registering for a primary business. We have several sub-accounts. None of them are going to go over 3,000 messages. So I applied for verification last week, and I've been checking it every day. I haven't checked it today, but it still says we're under review. So we are corporation US. I supplied the EIN, all the information.
They've got to be really backed up. That's got to be my answer to that. I mean, you got to figure they're getting a flood of those people.
Yeah. Okay.
So here's how I answer that question. First of all, I start with two questions. First question is, how old is your corporation? First question, how long has it been around?
It's not mine. It's a group of us. It's at least 3 years old.
Okay. Has there been any changes to the address or ownership of the company? Anything public record based that may have changed in the last, say, 3 to 6 months?
I don't think so. Pretty sure not.
Okay. Does your website clearly have your contact information, including address, listed on it?
That would probably be no, because the website they had me submit is basically just a landing page for the current coaching program.
Okay.
There isn't a website for the corporation, so to speak, but we do have an active Facebook group. So that's the group that I submitted. It is a coaching group with obvious, communication within the group. The contact information, I'll have to double check on that. There may not be any on that landing page.
Okay, people that have had recent changes to their business, including address, change of ownership, anything on public records, it does get held up. I've seen as long as 30 days, but I would say 5 to 10 business days is the norm for any time there's an application or a registration that's in question. Other examples of problems I've seen is if you have a DBA and you listed your corporation, right? And your website is a DBA and there's no proof that your DBA is attached to your actual corporation or LLC for that matter, it can hold up the process.
Okay.
So I would suspect that it has something to do with their verifying or vetting your business. Something, on the surface didn't add up immediately. So it's in like a manual review cycle. I do see people that literally have been approved within 30 minutes, within 60 minutes. So there's something in your application or your registration that's holding it up.
Okay, and you'll see another question along the same lines a little bit further down in the Q&A, but so in that situation, we still do need to register and get approved by August 15th. Otherwise, there will be fees. Am I understanding that correctly?
There's been, Sean might be able to help with this. There has been some rumor that the deadline of August 16th with respect to fees, registration fees, has been pushed back. I have not myself seen that. Sean?
Yeah, so I confirmed that with my Twilio rep. And by the way, for the record, it's ironic enough, we have a meeting with Twilio in an hour, but to just continue to talk through this and just moving into the ISV model. But she did confirm that basically that that deadline in general has been pushed back. Her specific words were, for starter brands, basically anybody who has a lot of starter brands and less than 5-digit long codes, you're going to be okay. I'm just pulling this up so let me post this. She referenced this actually in the email I just got from her. So let me throw this in the chat so everyone can look at it. But it says secondary vetting. So they talk a lot about secondary vetting on this article, and she specifically says regarding the timeline, Twilio will offer the option to opt out of secondary vetting. So, and you can also see there's a pass-through. Twilio will cover this fee for all primary brands registered before October 1st. And so it seems to me like this article is indicating that it says, I'm an ISV, will the $44 fee apply to all my secondary brands? It said, yes, by default, it will, but they'll cover the cost of it for any primary brand registered before October 1st. But ISVs will still have to cover the cost of their secondary brand starting after August 21st. Starter brand registrations for smaller clients, though, are not affected by this change. So the thing I take away from this is they're very cagey about their responses, primarily because I think they're getting this upstream from carriers, and I think that the data on this probably changes daily, because you got to figure what's really happening is a bunch of corporate folks who work at Verizon and T-Mobile and all this other stuff are like getting around a table all the time trying to figure this all out, and then they're sort of like pushing it down to the folks at Twilio and Telemix and all the other providers. So I think it's shifting on them quite a bit. But in general, I'd also say it feels to me like most of this is really focused on people who are above the starter brand level. That seems to be where the impact is going to be mostly felt. And I got to tell you, the number of people above that level, at least in our system, is got to be about 1%.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, who's next?
The next one is, does the filtering apply for single SMS or massive marketing campaigns? I think an SMS is an SMS, right? That goes towards the 3,000 daily.
Yes,
count,
I believe so. Yes.
Whether it was manually sent or automated out of a workflow, et cetera.
So yeah, what I do know is all messaging sent through Twilio or any other Twilio-like provider is now considered A2p by definition. There is no ability to denote a message as being P2P, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, cool. Sean, I think Mike is coming in on his other computer, so if you can find him,
okay,
that'd be great. The next question that we have is, if we register all 100 plus of our sub accounts and then High Level comes out with their solution, what's the plan to migrate all of our clients over so there are no interruptions?
Shivam for the win.
So even with so today, let's say you do this entire thing and you have your own Twilio and all your clients are using your Twilio. when we roll out the ISV model, there's going to be a one-click option for you to move them over from your service to our service. And I mean, like there are a bunch of technical challenges over there, but we'll get around it, and it will be one-click migration.
And Shivam, will that be one click, like you can do it sub account by sub account?
Yes, you can do it sub account by sub account, and you can also like we also have the provision where you can define this at agency level. So all the new clients that you sign from that point onwards will automatically follow the high level service. Yeah.
Oh, that's smart. Cool. All right. Next question is, sorry if I missed this, is the 3,000 per sub account? That's
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Per day, per sub account. Okay, we just answered that. What if I'm a sole proprietor with no LLC? They asked for an LLC. Am I supposed to give my social security number?
Good question.
Is Michael back?
I didn't see him in the participants list yet. No, but
Let's keep trucking and we can roll back to that one, Troy. Paul posted an update from
I had a
Twilio.
small pointer on the last question.
Sure.
So if you are trying to register as an ISV, I think you will need the LLC registration. But if your locations are trying to register as a brand, they won't need it.
that's right. I think you're correct in that, Shivam. So yeah, so individual businesses can absolutely register as sole props, but you can't as a standard brand registration. But you can't become. I don't believe you can be an ISV without as a sole prop. I think you're correct on that. But that's okay because everyone can register as an LLC in about 60 seconds in pretty much any state in the union these days.
All right, next up, Paul, I'm confused about the 5-number limit. Is that all encompassing for all accounts and
No, that's per sub account.
per sub account? Paul, Elizabeth, if I don't send over 3K a day, I don't need to register then.
Basically, no.
Question. Okay. What information are they requesting for the sub accounts for registration?
Shivam.
So it is different for different. So if it's a starter registration, which means you want to use less than 5 phone numbers and less than 3,000 emails, it's very straightforward. First name, last name, phone number, email. That's it. But once you cross that limit, there's a secondary registration, and that involves a bit more paperwork. We are still waiting on the exact form fields that are required, but I'm pretty sure they are going to ask for like some sort of business identification, some sort of ID proof. So that's going to be there.
So Michael definitely has more on this. Sean, do we see him in the list yet? Mike Lucy's iPhone.
Oh.
And I believe he's actually even working on to automate it so that he's going through their API. So we can get an update from him when he's back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Hey, there you are, Mike.
Sorry about that. This was the worst time for a Windows restart.
It happens. Did you hear that last question, Mike?
I did, but if you could repeat it, it'd be helpful.
Sure. So if you're registering a sub account, they're asking what information they ask for. Shivam said if it's just a starter brand, that it's very straightforward. But if it's going above the 5 phone number limit, the 3,000 limit, they ask for much more information. Do you have an idea of what they ask for?
Right now, if you register manually on Twilio, you have no choice but to submit everything, including EIN. So the starter brand process is not going to be deployed until middle of August. So right now, if you are registering, you have to go through the full registration, including EIN.
So that's like business address, I'm assuming. Do you have to upload like a photo of the business license and stuff like you do when you register for other countries?
No, it's a business name, legal business address. Then a couple drop downs that identify, your business, your industry. I don't have it in front of me. I'm on my phone. And then an identification, EIN being one of them. Everyone I know that uses EIN goes through the process faster. The people I know that tried Dunn's number, it didn't work. So use EIN.
Okay.
EIN. If you don't have an EIN, you will have problems right now until the starter brand process is available.
Gotcha. So that's kind of like a chicken and the egg. If you're trying to register before the date, you're gonna have to
Correct.
go through a longer process. Got it.
Correct.
All right. Next up is Paul. So if the sub account is using less than 5 phone numbers, then we don't need to register them, or we'll be able to use the starter plan. That's right, Paul. James, Sean, any ideas about Shake and Stir or CNAM registration through the new high-level setup?
Good question. Just in general, Mike, do you know how the Stir, Shake, and impacts CNAM?
How it impacts CNAM, how they work together?
Yeah, correct.
They're two independent. I don't know if they work together. I don't know if one impacts the other.
Okay,
So
that's a good question. I mean, because what I'm noticing, for example, like Google's verified thing is there's no way that's not going to run on top of CNAM, and so ultimately, I think that's so. The number one thing I'm noticing is the major carriers, or sorry, excuse me, the major handset vendors and more importantly, phone OS vendors, Android and Apple, they're clearly rolling out their own solutions. So one of these things is, I actually think, like, for example, with Google, there's no way they're not tying it all into Google My Business. Now, and Apple, I would be shocked to find they don't try to do something very similar. On our side, what I can see here is on the Twilio ends, CNAM, they have a beta CNAM thing. So with the Trust Hub REST API, you can actually start to associate CNAM entries with your Trust Hub verified sort of thing. So what I will say is I'm gonna throw this at Shivam and we'll run it down as part of the ISV model, because I do think lots of people would love the idea that as they update like their company information or something, or on the phone number page, they could like name the number out in the world. I think that would be kind of useful for
Can you
people.
give us a quick, Sean, rundown of what Shake and Stir is and what CNAM is?
Sure. So CNAM is just basically a database that contains the name that appears on the phone when it rings in. Now, it used to be sort of universally true that this was accurate, but you have to realize that, again, Google and Apple are sort of on top of, like, in front of that now. And so there's some debate as to, who shows up when a call comes in. But I kind of sort of think of it like, if Google really thinks it knows who you are, like that you've gone through the verified Google program, they probably show that. But outside of it, they probably fall back on the CNAM. So that's sort of what CNAM is. Stir Shaken is, have you ever gotten the call that says, hi, this is the IRS, you owe us $500,000, give us your credit card. And you're like, oh yeah, right. Or sadly, some people say, oh, here you go. The problem there is that right now, those numbers are not tied to a person. So Stir Shaken, named after the James Bond, of course, is designed to associate that number with the true owner or originator of the call, so that if that person is marked as spam, that those reports filter back to that individual, so that person can, first of all, be stopped, and then ultimately identified and unmasked and dealt with appropriately. And actually, I think it's one of the most interesting things, because on our side, we don't have IRS scammers in our system, but what we do have is we have outbound sales teams, and I'm really curious at long term how that works, because a lot of people want us to do number rotation or local numbers when they're making calls, those sort of things. But I'm curious as to how quickly that game will get dried up, because if a couple of people start hitting spam, I think it's going to axe that number out of the system, and those outbound calls are going to all get marked as spam very quickly. Kind of like today when you send a cold email out, maybe your first 10 emails get out, but the rest just get junked. So it'll be very interesting. But Stir Shaken is basically like the A2p 10 DLC of calls.
Got it. Randy, are we talking about just the main numbers for accounts or all numbers, such as those for users?
No. User numbers are literally the numbers that we forward out to. We're just talking about the Twilio numbers purchased on the phone number settings page.
Yep. So all numbers on that page. When you spin up a number from Twilio, that goes towards the 5. Exactly. JJ, does the 5 number count sub account numbers or 5 numbers per account?
Per sub account.
Anonymous, if I'm understanding this correctly, if I have more than 1,000 accounts registered in my agency as sub accounts, that automatically puts me in a scenario where I must register all of them. Is that correct?
most likely.
No, I don't think that's correct, right? The number of sub accounts you have.
Well, okay, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing is I would just say if you have 1,000 sub accounts in your Twilio account, you really the bigger thing I would say is you really ought to have a Twilio rep because that makes you a pretty big account, right? So I would get a hold of them and say, hey, I'm a big fish. Give me an account rep, and they'll give you a direct contact. It's probably technically true if they're all starter brands that maybe you don't have to do that, but at the same time, I would want to have a rep.
I would just one small clarification. Even with starter brands, the registration has to be done. It is a starter registration. There is no fee for it, but they have to be registered. It's not like we can forget about it and not talk about it for next 6 months.
Well, yeah, that's true. But what is true is they've delayed the implementation or the enforcement of that. Yes, that's true. Which we're happy about because it gives us time to get the ISV model out and operational so that hopefully we can just sort of fold the registration in and make it very simple and easy.
I know it's a difficult question. How are you going to manage moving the sub accounts and all the phone numbers from under, say, our ISV under yours? Have you had that conversation with the rep?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, so Twilio knows we're coming and they have a process set up for us. So it's going to basically just all happen behind the scenes. So we'll send them. They've given us the ability to just send them the sub account information, and then they'll verify with the original account owner, obviously as a security measure, and then from there they'll slide it over. And then we'll watch on our side. We'll pre-create that sub account on our side. So we'll say, hey, here's the new sub account. Here's the existing sub account, right? They'll verify, they'll slide it over. And when they slide it over, we'll be notified. And then you'll be able to just simply, it'll just hook, it'll either, I mean, we'll see how fast we get everything done, but the goal is just have it automatically hook up and just keep going.
And one thing to keep in mind is that while this transition is happening, your service will be active. Like there will be no impact on calls or SMS. While the transition is happening, your account will stay functional.
Nice. So Tom had a similar type of question. My agency will opt in to join the new GHL Twilio account when available. 2 questions. We should take no action at this time because we will join GHL. I think it's up to you, Tom, right? So again, our new option won't be available until October, November. And Twilio has said they're pushing back the deadline. So it seems like you have the option to do nothing, but I don't think we're officially telling you to do nothing because, you might want to just go and register it as an ISV in the meantime to protect yourself just in case they change their mind again and do start enforcing it sooner. His second question is, and in the future, can we become independent? So it sounds like if people go into the high-level Twitter, can they come back out?
You mean Twilio? Yes.
Twilio, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have any designs of keeping people. We don't hold our customers hostage. So there'll absolutely be a process for that.
All right. Next up, there are no commissions or fees and no obligation whatsoever.
Sounds good to me.
Like a statement. Sure. Okay, we'll go.
No, I mean, so I don't know if this is related. One person did ask, are there additional costs and all that? Our goal is really simple. On our side, it's going to be a 0 cost maneuver. So no additional fees to move over, no upcharge, no nothing. It should be seamless all the way across. We're just trying to do this as a way to help people and just honestly simplify onboarding. And again, just we continue to move into a world where there's like a lot more sub accounts, and as an agency, you're trying to do 10 other things. We're just thinking, hey, look, if we can make this easier for everybody, why don't we do it?
Cool.
With the understanding that if someone registers under you and they aren't eligible for the ISV starter, that I'm assuming they'll still have to pay the $44.
Oh, yes. Good clarification there. Yeah. So if there is a charge, it's not going to be our charge. I mean, we may pass through some costs from Twilio or something like that, or a carrier charge. But yeah, we will not be tacking on a margin to the fees and all that. So I mean, but again, I guess I'm sort of thinking from the perspective of most starter brands. So that's true.
99% of us don't go over that 3,000 a day.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, if there are fees, they'll simply be whatever the fees are that are charged by the carriers.
What will be the date high level version? The high level version will be available in October. We don't have an exact date.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna let the product manager speak for that.
It's hard to pinpoint. There are a lot of variables at play, but we'll try to deliver it by the end of the month, so end of October. Yeah.
We'll probably have a beta in early October and follow it out with a full rollout by the end.
Yeah.
And if I may add here, during the last 3 weeks, as kind of we picked up the baton for this A2p stuff for our agency and for a host of others, we have a working API for registration right now. So the REST API for primary and secondary, we do have a working version of that. Our team, we deferred development after the announcement on Friday, but on our roadmap is if there is enough people in the community to continue developing the REST API for Shake and Stir, CNAM, ultimately branded calls. We have that on hold pending, demand for that from the community. I just wanted to.
No, and I think that's super wise. I mean, that's actually why we wanted to have Michael here. He's definitely an expert at this. He's been through it many times, and I think he will be a big asset to anybody who is going to certainly go, to go at this in a very big way, or just has unique needs or what have you. Because on our side, our goal that we're very tunnel visioned on the 99%. If you're the 1%, or you're, maybe I'm wrong on my math, but if you're the 95% or something, but if you're all concerned about it, I would reach out to him directly, because again, they do have a lot of resources already in place that we don't. And I think long-term, they'll be the people to talk to for any kind of complex setup.
Yeah, Michael, and we'll loop back to this at the end, but throw your URL in the chat so people can grab it. Next question, with the high level option to take it over, this will mean you guys are now essentially our Twilio. All of our customers will just purchase and pay through high level instead of Twilio.
Yeah, so that's an interesting. Okay, so yeah, yes and no. So yes, we will. Yes, it will be under our master Twilio account. And by the way, this is how every other piece of software on the internet except us works, which is everyone uses Twilio. They just don't say, "Hey, we use Twilio," right? They just say, "Yep, we come with texting." And so, and phone calls and all that. So, but in that case, your customers will hopefully pay you because you're using the Twilio rebilling that we've put into the system, but you're actually going to pay us. So we're going to charge your agency for all of the numbers and all of the usage. We have the Twilio rebilling the system specifically designed so that you could upcharge that and make money off of it. But some agencies choose not to, and some agencies will choose to. But either way, the money's for all of that usage will come out of your pocket first, which is exactly how it works today because you're currently signed up with Twilio. But hopefully you take advantage of the Twilio rebilling and make some money out of the deal.
So question, are these new carrier fees going to be included in the markup?
Yes. Whenever we decide to, so even today, there are some carrier charges. In fact, those of you who are on Twilio rebilling, just go and look in a particular location. You might see carrier charges occasionally. Those charges come to us from Twilio as part of the same API. Even when this happens, and even after the registration and brand registration, whatever the charges are, they will come up in the same fashion. It will show up in the transaction log.
But correct me if I'm wrong, right now, the carrier fees are not marked up.
No, they are.
Oh,
So
they
if
are.
you have
There's a lot of carrier fees here. So there's the per minute fee or the per message fees and all of that. That I believe is included. But if you're talking about the specific registration fees and all that, they haven't launched yet.
So I'm talking specifically the new A2p fees.
Yeah, those aren't in there yet. So because we haven't launched.
Okay. So for those, I mean, that's just be aware of those fees for anyone doing markup, especially markup at a smaller margin, is your costs have went up this month. And for any future clients, you may want to consider just bumping it up a little bit more because your margins are a little thinner now than they were a month ago.
Are you talking about the A2p per message fees specifically?
Yes, yes.
Shivam, do we have those taken care of yet?
Yes, we talked to the Twilio guys, and it's coming in the same API. So if there's a cost increase, the message cost itself will increase, and we are marking that.
Okay. Yeah.
So it will work.
Okay, that's perfect. So to be very specific, the per message fees are already included today. The brand registration fees are not. But as of now, I don't even think those are rolled out. So
Okay. Hey, a quick shout out. I've been meaning to put this in the community. I ran a humongous campaign for a political candidate Senate seat, and I ran my reconciliation reports with your usage reports out of the billing and the location. It matched Twilio and Stripe to the penny. So your reporting on the SMS and voice calling for rebilling is spot on. It's money. Great job, guys.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we think so too. And I mean, I really truly believe that this is a big solution for agencies. Like, people don't quite understand, how much money you can make off very little amounts of money. Because it's like, well, it's $20. What did I make? But like, just do the math over time. It adds up quick.
Yeah, so Bill said, I'm assuming all costs will be marked up as per our SaaS configurator settings. So yes, and then Helder confirmed, I see them in my account, the carrier fees, it's covered. Cool. So next up was Vicky. I heard what was said about being under the master high-level account, but I think I just need to see a checklist or something that shows what is included in each option, pros, cons. We are a smaller agency and do not have any sub-accounts that hit 3,000 per day, and it seems like going with high-level is a no-brainer, but am I missing something? Is waiting until this is rolled out with high-level at the end of September a good plan due to that, as in doing nothing now and waiting? Or should we do a partial setup and register the agency main account and not the sub-accounts while we wait?
Michael, what would you do on that one?
It's a risk reward. I mean, ultimately, I would throw the question back at you is, are you confident you'll have a solution in place despite all the unknowns with the carriers? Are you confident you'll have a solution in place by the time the carriers flick the switch and start blocking or filtering?
I mean, the easy answer to that is no, because what I do know is that we're at the whim of the carriers, and the carriers call the shots. So they could flip that switch tomorrow without calling us and getting our approval. What I know is on our side, we put our best and brightest to bear, and it is, if not one of the most important things we're working on the entire quarter. And it's not an easy thing to do, nor necessarily is it an exciting thing to do, because it's not like, woo, yay, we got a new feature, right? But it's important to me to get done. And so we will do our level best to get there as fast as humanly possible. And on our side, we are hoping for the best. And we think between now and then, worst case scenario, we'll just send everybody to you.
So another, just to quell the fear and uncertainty of everyone, is in the last week, two things have happened. One is that the carriers announced they're deferring any blocking or filtering. So what that did is it immediately removed any operational panic that we had. So I think Chase and Sean made that pretty clear last Friday. Anything operational, meaning the ability to deliver messages, is deferred for at least a couple months, quote unquote, at least a couple months. Is that the correct words?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Okay. Now, beyond that, sorry to use the term, the other doomsday scenario was August 16th was the line of demarcation between having a subsidized registration fee and not having a subsidized registration fee. Rumor has it, for me, I haven't seen it in writing, that that deadline has now been moved out. Sean says that indeed it has been moved out. Do we have any idea if there's a concrete date behind that subsidy deadline?
I mean, right now it stands at October 1st, I believe. But again, I think what is very difficult in this situation is that people, there is not certainty. And there is no way that anyone can give you certainty, including Twilio, because
let's look at it from another angle. It costs nothing to register yourself right now, right? And Michael, how long does it take to register as an ISV?
For you and your agency, it takes 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
For your ISV. So by all means, I would do that.
Yeah.
And if you
that's-
register
okay.
yourself as an ISV, it doesn't mean you can't then roll into the high level option when it becomes available. So in my mind, if it takes 15 minutes, I'm going to go register my agency as an ISV because why not? I'm going to save myself a fee and cover my butt.
The challenge on that is do I register my sub accounts or not? Is, you know, that's the driving force behind all the people I've spoke with this week. Is, do I need to get this done so I can save on $44 per sub account? I have 100 clients, Mike. What is your recommendation? What we do know is we bought a little bit of extra time such that there's not this looming August 16th deadline. And if in fact October 1st is the deadline for the subsidized registration fees, I would recommend today start as per Chase. Do your primary business profile for your agency. Get that over with.
I agree.
Everything else is dependent upon that being approved. Once that's approved, if you're feeling anxious about the process, and the closer we get to August 1st, prioritize your clients into the list of who sends the most messages and knock out the clients that send the most messages first.
Yeah. See, I think that's a very good strategy. I would agree with that concept.
If you try to do this, if you have 100 clients and you try to do it in, you know, all at once, you'd kill yourself. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. So.
Okay, cool. So next question is, but that's an important thing to consider. Once we go past the date, whatever the date ends up being, it's going to be $44 per sub account if you wait.
Yep.
Solomon, so guys, what are the par scores out of 100 per se, and what does a 65 out of 100 score imply?
I got that one on lockdown. I've seen so many of these. So 65 is your initial score of 65 is the equivalent of an A- to an A. That's a very good score. Chances are 2 or 3 days after receiving your initial score of 65, you're going to get an updated email that says you're officially approved at a score higher than 65. The number is the equivalent of a digital internet SMS credit check. Get an initial score, you get a final score. The score has nothing to do with anything except sending limits. If you're between, I believe, 55 and 75, your limit is 10,000 mixed messages a day. When you get above 75, you're at 100,000. So anything above 75 is an A+, and it doesn't matter if you're a 76 or a 90 from what I've seen. But an initial score of 65 is A worthy. Congratulations.
Yeah, and again, I also think this will ebb and flow in time as people as they see, you know, because again, this is a system where somebody just had to guess all this stuff ahead of time, and now they're going to see where the rubber hits the road. So there's a lot here to come, and this is another reason why I think we're doing the right thing at the right time to take over a lot of this complexity, because it's just something that long term people won't want to have to deal with.
And if I may add, I have seen a handful of, very few, but a handful of businesses that got approved below a 30. I saw one as low as a 5. So I view this as one. If you do get a low score like that, your limit is going to be 0. Unfortunately, you can't send messages. So two things to be aware of is, number one, you can challenge that score by paying $40 and have them take a second look at it. And number two, it's kind of like if you speak with an LO, a loan officer, and someone comes back with a credit check of 400, that loan officer can't help you. Inevitably, there's some digital behavior that is identifying you as a risk. So if I was the person getting a lower score, the first thing I would do is consider what bad behavior I have done in the past to maybe get me a bad score. Start there, and then reconcile or rectify that behavior, whatever it is.
Cool. So we just hit 1 hour and 15, so I want to keep on trucking. We've got like 18 more questions in the Q&A. So let's go hyper speed through these. Will GHL have Twilio HIPAA protocols in place for HIPAA compliant GHL accounts on your hosted option?
That is our goal. So we have, when we meet with Twilio, actually it turns out that they pushed it to tomorrow, but tomorrow we'll make sure and ask that question. And we'll have to deal with this on our side one way or another. So we will figure out the right answer, and we will provide for a HIPAA compliant option. If it's physically possible. Sorry, go ahead.
Cool. Twilio is asking me to move forward with campaign registration now. I didn't register an ISV back in Feb. I have sub accounts with 5+ numbers now. Suggestion, my score is 83. If you've got 5+ numbers in sub accounts, I think you definitely need to register those now. Because why not? Save yourself the money and the risk. So I would register as an ISV and then register the sub accounts that have more than 5 numbers, Helder.
And be aware that if you have more than 5 numbers, you can bundle all the numbers into one messaging use case. And that'll save you money short-term and long-term. If you haven't went through the process yet, when you're registering a messaging use case, it will ask you what phone number or phone numbers are attached to this messaging use case. You can select all, one, many, or all of the phone numbers. So if all your users have the same campaigns, same workflows, same messaging, then you can apply that use case to all numbers. It'll save you a lot of time.
And so that's interesting. So does that, if you bundle numbers together, does that keep you from in the starter realm?
To be honest, that's just I don't know. With this new announcement of 5 numbers, it appears
I might have some insight
no
over
longer
there.
the case.
I mean, if you just register the same campaign, you can save money on the number of campaigns that you register. But it's not like you bundle the numbers together and you can still stay on the starter pack. Like if you have more than 5 long codes, you still would need a secondary brand registration. But what are you using those like 10 numbers for? If it's the same campaign, you just tell them that, hey, I just have one use case, which is the marketing use case. Then you can save money on the number of campaigns that you register.
Correct. We had one gentleman that had 62 phone numbers, and he just rolled them all up into one messaging use case. All 62 users, it's used for appointment reminders. So he put in an appointment reminder use case, and it was approved pretty quickly.
Well, so wait, this is the first I'm hearing of an additional fee. So it's $44 to register a sub account, right? But then there's also a dollar amount to register each number.
So there's a sheet floating around in the group, in both groups. It's red and it's a chart, and it has next side by side ISV starter and regular, ISV and ISV starter. And in the 2 columns on this sheet, it clearly identifies what the fees are. There is right now there's a secondary profile or secondary business registration fee of $4 for the profile and $40 for the sub business, $44 total. Beyond that, there's a per month fee for the messaging use case of $2 to $10. That's what it says on paper, $2 to $10. And I believe that's a carrier implemented fee on a per messaging use case. And on top of that are the per unit SMS or MMS fees that we're already seeing in our Twilio. So there's 3 separate charges.
So there's a monthly fee for each messaging use case. And so if you say all my numbers are for marketing, you're paying 1 monthly fee. And that fee is TBD.
What that fee is, I don't know. It just says $2 to $10 is all it says.
Got it. Cool.
But it is $44 to register that business in a non-ISP starter brand scenario.
Got it. In checking my registration, it looks like each messaging service needs to be registered separately. Is this correct?
1 messaging service per number. You can only
unless you bundle them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can only give two examples. So one phone number, a phone number can only have 1 messaging use case, and you're only allowed to give 2 examples. So if you have, say, 10 SMSs in a campaign, the question that I have and everyone else has is, which of those 10 do I select as my examples? And if I don't select the other 8, am I going to get in trouble, or am I going to get a demerit or a black check for sending messages outside of that message use case example? I don't have an answer to that, but it did cause me to scratch my head.
Okay, interesting.
And this is one of the things that we'll clarify with Twilio tomorrow. The definition of campaigns, it's not laid out clearly anywhere. And like my guess is, like, this is my best guess, it's going to be a high level definition. It's not like you'll have to register each and every SMS. Like, it will be a high level use case. Like, what are you using this for? Like, I'm using this for marketing, and that could include a lot of marketing workflows. I'm using this for reminders. Like, it could have like 5 different appointment reminder campaigns in it. So it's going to be a high level use case. I mean, you don't need to register each and every SMS in your workflow. I think that is just not feasible, but we'll clarify that tomorrow on our call with Twilio.
Another
cool.
interesting kind of helpful hint here is, do not use the word lead anywhere in any place you have to type something out. It's an automatic rejection, lead or lead generation. What you're trying to do is not give Twilio an impression or paint a picture that you're using this for anything cold. I can guarantee the word lead is an automatic rejection. And even the word marketing, I try to steer away from that myself, and I use the top option or the engage, notify users or engage in a discussion.
Gotcha. All right, next up, I have a question I've been asking a lot that is connected to the SME topic, and that is, when is WhatsApp integration coming to high level? And that's kind of a separate conversation, but is WhatsApp a part of this? Because WhatsApp is going to flow through Twilio, or?
Correct. So WhatsApp integration will be offered only in the ISV model because it has to be. We had to use Twilio's Rails, and more importantly, they're in with Facebook to get in ourselves. And so, yeah, WhatsApp will be required. The only way we're allowed to offer it is that.
Cool. If we have a lot of sub accounts, will we get hit with fees for each sub account? Okay, we talked about that. By the way, they do charge $4. So when the new high level option is out, when our customers sign up, will they have to register through high level, or will they be able to just buy numbers through their account?
They're just going to buy numbers through their account. So there's no like registration with high level. High level is not transparent to them. They will know high level exists. Those buy numbers, and when they're buying numbers, those numbers charges will be charged to you. And again, remember, with the rebilling, the idea here is that if they buy a number, let's say it's $1 a month, now you're making hopefully $2 at least a month on the number, or they're sending 1,000 text messages and it's costing $1. Hopefully it's you're charging $10, right? That kind of thing.
So one thing to be aware of here is, if someone, like, I'm trying to envision or imagine how you're going to have your system set up. So I'm going to guess it's something like, when a new account is created under my agency, high level, you guys, Shivam and the development team, you're going to extract the business name, the address, contact information, and you're just going to pass that along in the API and register that secondary business as an ISV starter. So with that being said, if anyone else out there is like me, number one, be aware, be conscious of, when you're filling in the address, that it should be as accurate as possible. And if you're here's a question for you guys. What about those of us that are constantly creating sandbox accounts?
Well, remember, the requirements for the registration are there's no address. It's name, email, and phone.
Yeah, for the starter registration under ISP, if you do an independent starter registration, maybe you'll require the address, but in the ISP, it's only first name, last name, phone number, email.
And business name, yes?
I mean, actually, even the business name is not a mandatory requirement on the starter registration under the ISP. Just first name, last name, phone name. Yeah.
Okay. And ultimately, the scenario of registering these secondary profiles, it comes down to risk, is what it comes down to. So as you're creating these accounts, make sure that you're creating your high level locations, your new high level clients, with as accurate of information as possible. If you've done anything like I have in the past, and I just slip my name into a sandbox account, or even slip my name into an account for someone that wants something quickly on the fly, I'll throw my name in there on occasion. I have done that many times. So now it becomes more important to pay attention to that, because if you put your name in there and your client does something in the gray or in the black, you are then responsible for that.
Okay,
so
cool.
Be more diligent in making sure your locations are filled out properly.
Good point, Mike. All right, we got about 5 minutes left, so let's fly through these. Do we have to register campaign use cases as part of this overall registration? I think we
Yeah,
sort of talked
we're
about
going to
that.
do we're going to do a generic one, I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
How will this work outside of the US and South America, Asia, etc.?
It doesn't impact outside the United States.
But it
Okay.
does trying to do business in the United States.
Bingo. Yeah. So it's not about, yeah, it's actually about where are you doing business, not
Can you register as an ISV with a business address outside of the US?
Not without proper identification right now.
Okay, but it sounds like you will register, just like, you'll register as an ISV and then you'll follow the guidelines if you're buying US numbers. Antonio, do we always have to send a message saying reply stop? So they know they can unsubscribe?
I would highly recommend, and I'll dig up a link for you guys, and if you distribute it to the entire community. And in this link, it clearly defines what is proper SMS and MMS protocol and procedures. There's a difference between someone manually opting in, by texting you, and someone filling out a form online. And to answer that question, I would say, refer to formal, official, legal, regulatory requirements. Indeed, you're supposed to allow for, especially at opt-in or double opt-in time, you're supposed to provide a description of the types of messaging you're sending, when you're sending them, and how they can opt out. Those are the requirements.
Gotcha. Cool. What happens if one of our sub accounts messes up and does something wrong underneath the new high level option? Will that affect our other customers?
No, it will not. That's actually a big part of being in the ISV model. So we'll be able to protect you from that. And in our case, we're not liable either. Thankfully, the sub account will be impacted, not the main account.
Okay, cool. So to wrap it up, this last question. If you have over 5 numbers, your numbers and sub accounts are sending less than 3,000 messages a day, and you don't have to register an LLC for those sub accounts, do you still have to register for A2p? So let's try. I think this is a good one. Let's just try to sum it all up. You should go register as an ISV. It takes a couple of minutes and it's free, and it'll save you a fee down the line. If you have sub accounts that have more than 5 numbers, you should go register those as well right now. If you don't, and none of your accounts are sending more than 3,000 messages a day, you'll probably be okay waiting for the high level ISV when it rolls out in Q4. I think that's about as good as we can sum it up, right?
That's right. And
No.
all things can change, and we are not in control of those changes. But our goal is to get to a place where we offer a model to help you as soon as possible.
And there's no reason to panic anymore at all, period. Full stop, end of story. Time has now been bought, number one. Number two is, like I mentioned at the beginning, consider the glass half full. I consider it completely full myself. Leverage this as an opportunity to position yourself as a compliance expert, leveraging what high level, the tools they're providing to you. They're going to help you become compliant. They're going to help your clients become compliant. That is a competitive advantage. So the cup for me is completely full.
Great.
Great.
And Mike, thanks you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely,
Again,
Mike. That was
Mike's-
awesome of you.
You can connect with Mike at a2p.allinOnesalespro.com. If you are running bigger accounts and you're going to need to register and you want to continue to run your own Twilio account, I would head over there, connect with Michael. I don't know, Mike, do you have a Facebook group going or something where you're going to continually update people?
Yeah, maybe drop a quick link in the chat for either of those. Or if we've got it, we can do it.
I'm on my phone. If you just search high level API, my group is it's high level API plugin software and development.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining, everybody. As major updates come, oh, great. Somebody dropped a link to the Facebook group. Thanks, Chris. as you know, more information comes to light, we'll obviously pass it on to the group, especially if it's critical information. But as of right now, you've got some breathing room. Hopefully, you've learned about some options today and you feel good one way or the other. And yeah, we will see you back in our Facebook group with updates.
Thanks
everyone
everybody.
for hanging out.
Bye for now.
All right.